Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail?
I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And today, we're diving deep into the power of resilience, self-knowledge, and the art of navigating complexity with a truly fascinating guest. My guest today is Dessy Levinson, an executive strategist, relational integration coach, and the creator of the CREATE framework for cognitive and emotional resilience. She's also the founder of CREATE.com and has spent over 2 decades working across advertising, venture capital, and high performance coaching. Through her unique approach, she helps leaders move from overwhelm to a state of empowered flow by aligning their mental narratives with emotional resilience. Well, I can't wait to explore her insights on how we can take control of our minds and transform our experience of reality. Dessy, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Dave.
Oh,
thank you.
It's a pleasure.
These are always so long, the bios. So it is, but thank you. Thank you for
I'm looking at a way to try and make them shorter. I did used to make them shorter by literally just doing a one-liner, but sometimes they want to sort of hear a lot of info about the guests. But the thing is, when I put the stuff out, I don't mind talking about this now on the show, but when I put it out, because they need to know about this, they can read it on the bio anyway, on the show notes, you see. So
exactly. And the most important thing I want people to remember is that about me and in general is that I'm fascinated with human puzzles. I'm fascinated with how humans human. And my job with all the different descriptions is just about solving human puzzles. Inside us, outside us, in the things we create, in the things we tell each other, all of it is a narrative and a puzzle.
Fantastic. Well, you talk a lot about the path from overwhelm to flow. Mm-hmm. So many of us struggle with that daily grind and feeling stuck or even mentally fragmented. So can you break down that flow, what that actually is, and why it's so important for resilience?
Yeah. So the concept of flow was originally coined, or at least defined and gathered, by a neuroscientist by the name of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And he studied flow for multiple decades in high-performing individuals, so in athletes and people under immense stress, but who were also chess players and people who had both cognitive and physical stress in different ways, and found that there was a space we could hit internally, like a trajectory that is very much like the J curve of exponential growth, where what we're learning and how we are adapting to whatever the environment is asking of us is continuously positive, meaning we both manage what is being asked of us, and it starts to feel good. So even though it's not the calm, peaceful, do nothing kind of thing that people often think about. Flow states are usually intense states. They are moments or sometimes hours. Sometimes, in my hypothesis, you can live like that for days or long periods of time. Where you just, the fittedness between what the environment is asking of you and the resources you have to give it are in some form of equilibrium. And so every time you ask for a little more, you can level up with a little more, and you can recognize what is being asked of you. And so that concept of flow, when Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi first came up with it, was something that usually happened for a few hours and had the quality that it was both pleasant, sometimes not in the moment, sometimes when you look back on it, it was pleasant, but it also, time became elastic. It both felt like took hours and hours, and like it went by in a snap, and all of it together. And so I got really curious because I saw that states of overwhelm have some of the same qualities where the environment's asking a lot of us.
Yes.
But I think the difference is that we do not need it in that equilibrium state. We feel overwhelmed. We feel like we don't have what it takes. We don't have either the cognitive, emotional, physical, all of those resources. And so we feel like just that intensity washes over us and swallows whole sometimes. And I speak here very much from experience of pushing myself
Oh, yeah, of course.
many times.
Yeah.
And then feeling like sometimes I would perform really well, sometimes I would barely make it, but it felt constricted. It felt really unpleasant, like I was struggling for survival. And so I started getting really curious of what would it take to switch to that almost gamer. I don't know if you ever played video games, but when you're playing a good game, your skills are leveling up together with how difficult the levels get.
That's it. And you kind of gradually feel that you've got there, and you think, oh wow, I'm on this level. Oh, I'm on this level. And if you look back at it, you think, oh, actually last year I was on basic, and now I'm on like superhero level. How did I get there? That kind of thing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And so that is the concept. When you do that in a good game, you're in a flow state, and we can do that in life as well. And so that's really what I noodled on for multiple years, both through working with high performing individuals and through the N of one experience of like really doing the internal work and recording for myself. When was the tension too much? When could I match it? And what could I craft internally? And that's how the framework actually came up, is what could I craft internally so that when I was most overwhelmed, when I could least remember all the science and all the flow state, actual neuroscience, how could I have the internal tools to be like, okay, what do I need right now? How do I keep leveling up?
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Well, as you know, I mean, you probably might not know, I used to be a firefighter as a professional job.
Yes.
But I also did track and studied the degree, even with my dyslexia. I was a mature student late in life. And what I'm trying to say is I can relate to the flow state that happened to me, well, in all three jobs, really, where things felt effortless. And I did my best performance there in both academic, when I took one of my exams. I think it was American politics module of my politics degree. And it was hard work because by then I didn't only just about realize people were saying you have to take a dyslexia test, Dave, blah, blah, blah. It became easier after that. But because of the way I studied for the politics, because a lot of it was sitting down, debating, talking and getting the information, and it felt so easy because I knew it inside out. It was the preparation. I didn't know about the leveling up thing. That's something new to me. But as an athlete, I competed on a high level as well, Olympic trials and big, championships.
And I'm curious, the moment you tell me that, I'm curious whether consciously or unconsciously you oriented towards some of those highly demanding. I mean, fire, it doesn't get more demanding than firefighting.
Exactly,
that's why we use it as a metaphor.
Yeah. Oh, you do you?
Here we often use like firefighting as a metaphor.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's quite interesting.
Putting yourself in extreme states.
Yeah, I was going to get onto that in a minute anyway. I was going to say, as an athlete, again, it was down to preparation. And again, the best races I had, when I came to compete. I used a lot of mindfulness, meditation. It wasn't called mindfulness then. It was only hypnosis and meditation then, but mindfulness became a word, a thing, after NLP and everything else. But they all got thrown into sports coaching, which was a hobby of mine, which is why I do sport coaching as an interest as well as politics as an interest. However, those two races, I felt the flow as if it was effortless because of the amount of energy and everything else, and I knew at that time I was ready. Readiness. With firefighting, you have to be ready every single time. But I remember a few times I went upstairs and it felt like I was floating. But you have to do that every day. You're not going to be floating every day. However, you have to keep on optimal performance with the fitness. And obviously I had that, keep up to date with all the information that you need and everything else, the knowledge you need for new things that's coming out, learn from incidents and everything else. it's a different thing. But yeah, it's interesting what you say about the leveling up. And I was saying about the firefighting because you have to be on peak performance all the time. It's not
Yeah.
like I said, oh, I've studied for this particular exam and felt
Yep.
really great for the American politics one. I felt really great for the Olympic trials. It's not.
Yep.
So it's a different thing with the firefighting. So it kind of like went on par with what you're talking about, really.
Yeah.
It's like it's dynamic all the time. We have this thing called dynamic risk assessment in the job where you have to risk assess why you're in the fire itself or incident, not just fire. We deal with all kinds of incidents and. So yeah. I mean, tell us more about your side of that. I'm quite intrigued with why you use firefighting actually as the metaphor.
It's because it's that intense. It's the intense, not just ability, desire to continuously test yourself for the sake of something usually bigger than yourself.
Yes.
So it's not fire escaping, it's firefighting where you willfully go into something
when everyone's
for
running
something
away.
greater. Yeah, exactly, precisely.
That's the saying,
usually to save the lives of others,
Yeah.
but to do something greater than yourself.
It's a big purpose, really, a very huge purpose. Yeah,
precisely. And I think that that's where some of the additional energy that is necessary for flow states comes from, because back to matching the resources we have with what the environment is asking of us. The resources we have are both finite on a physical level and not as finite as we think on an emotional, cognitive, and creative or spiritual level. There's this sense, and the crate framework, as I started thinking of, okay, what are the tools if I'm building a metaphorical toolbox to contain all of this overwhelm? And that's why I came up with the crate idea, because often when you want to contain overwhelm, when you train dogs, when you crate things, you gather them.
Yeah.
And so the idea of gathering yourself, gathering your multitudes, gathering all the emotions, the good and the what we consider not so good, emotions, being able to contain it all. And so then I came up with, okay, what is the minimum viable tools I need? And clarity, agency, and trust seem to be kind of the things that, especially in professional coaching and in kind of the more cerebral part of existence, you want to know where you are. So that's clarity, both what you can do, but also more importantly, what you can't do. You want agency to actually act on it. So it's one thing to know, it's a very different thing to step into the arena and actually act. And the trust part is, I learned firsthand within myself and then in observing others, that if we don't think we'll succeed, even on an unconscious level, we generally don't even try.
Yeah.
And so how do we build that internal trust in our capacity to survive, essentially, literally or metaphorically, so that we keep trying, so that we keep entering the arena, the burning house, the whatever metaphor you want to use. And so as I was building that was all made perfect sense because it was cognitive, and I tended to very much live in my head when I first started this. And then I discovered that what's in the head is all good, but then there's all this liminal and subliminal stuff that is happening in the nervous system and the body, the somatic parts that are just as important, and sometimes actually more so, because they often drive the show. And that's where the regulation and energy parts of CRATE come in. So CRATE stands for clarity, regulation, agency, trust, and energy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's good.
And so I
quantified mnemonic.
it.
It's a good mnemonic to remember.
Precisely. Yeah. And so that's how I started orienting toward it. And at this point, whenever I get overwhelmed, I just kind of check through them and go, what is the thing that's missing right now? Kind of like a mix panel. Which one do I need to lift up? And for me, it's often these days either the trust one or the energy one. And then back to, what resources do you have? Sometimes it's as simple as, do you have sufficient nutrition? Do you have sufficient sleep? How is the body feeling? Can it perform? Can it focus?
Yeah.
But then there's also relational energy, the one we're experiencing right now, how ideas ping pong between us and become something greater than the sum of their parts. How insight is an emergent property in conversations, in interaction with our environment. And then beyond that, I think that there is a creative, and I think a lot of people think of it as well as a spiritual energy, but I spent 10 plus years of my life as a creative director and understood how ideas don't just like, you can't think of ideas. You got to walk around until the muse hits you on the head, until something interrupts you in your tracks. And so that kind of energy that comes from the outside world, the universe, however you frame it, that energy is also really important, because I think that that's where the things like purpose and meaning and greater resilience actually come in, and taking us full circle to like the willingness to do anything that's extremely hard or extremely dangerous. You need for your energy stack to be aligned, to have all of it in order to have the trust, in order to have the agency, in order to then regulate all of it, in order to get the clarity. So Crate works both, forwards and backwards. And I started seeing it as actually a cycle or a loop or an upward spiral, pick your visual.
Wow, yeah, well, that's quite a good explanation. Yeah, well, your work combines deep psychological insight with practical business strategies, so which is obviously a rare blend. What personal experiences or challenges led you to develop the Crate framework and dedicate your career to helping others navigate complexity?
Yeah. It was, the honest question is that I always wanted to continue perform. I wanted to keep pushing myself. I wanted to keep learning and also performing at the top of my game without even knowing what that meant, just a continuous leveling up. And the more I pushed throughout my life, the more I saw that the overwhelm, the intensity was threatening to swallow me whole. Particularly through spending close to a decade in early stage venture and working with startups, I saw that there is, I mean, from a business perspective, there is little that is as intense as early stage startups, because you're literally, your runway is sometimes 1 month, ideally 3 to 6 months, but you're not just flying by the seat of your pants. You're continuously running out of runway as you're building the ship and trying to reach escape velocity.
Absolutely,
And that intensity really reveals people, who people are, how they interact, how they react.
Okay, I didn't know that.
In intense situations. It's a little bit like early parenthood when you have a baby and you don't have, like, you're trying to figure out what's going on and how to stop this screaming human from crying and keep them alive.
I'm still doing that.
Exactly.
I know. I see your analogy though, because obviously I'm actually investing in a startup right now, and I'm doing quite well financially. But however, they're hiding it, but I think they are screaming and blah blah blah, because they're trying to get all the regulations, get everything in place and nuts and bolts, and they're not telling us about that. And none of the startup would tell their investors about that, would they?
Precisely. It's actually been really fascinating, because I spent a long time, probably 6-7 years, speaking to startups as an investor, and then shifted to the other side of the table as an executive coach and working with startups and inside startups. And I was like, okay, I only thought I knew what was going on from the investor perspective. But you get to see so much more.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
In the actual coaching conversations, in the actual, like, all right, let's actually look at what's going on. What's going on inside you, what's going on in your P&L.
And the business,
Exactly. And the business very much evidences what is happening inside the humans. So in much the same way as, and I mean, children are a very good metaphor, because as they grow up, you get to see what the parents, both from nature and nurture, put into them. And then who those humans become is a reflection of the environment they grew up in.
Well, that's right.
Similarly, the products we build, the startups we build, the culture we build inside startups is very much, I mean, close to 100%, a reflection of the humans who founded, who set the tone, who set the ideas. And particularly the unconscious things, our biggest fears, whatever we're trying to avoid, sooner or later shows up and gets bigger and bigger, kind of as an invisible force in the room. And so that was watching all of that and continuously thinking there has to be a better way. Like, I have to understand this puzzle. I have to understand what's going on and how to at least be pointing at what's going on and have the language to address it with founders, with myself, in just human dynamics in general.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's another great answer as well, which is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I know that one of the startups is a mindfulness app, and they
Mhm.
kind of helped me to come on board as, I mean, I was
Yep.
just interested in coaching, as I
Hmm.
said, from the fitness and
Yep.
sports side
Yep.
when I was a kid, you know, up
Yep.
to what's this stress about when I was a
Yep.
firefighter, like
Yep.
yourself, and then took a
Yep.
resilience one. Then
Yep.
they just took me on board, and then they're a startup still, and they've got investors. They're getting bigger,
Yep.
but then this other one is more a finance, fintech thing.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of people trying to shoot them down, and I can see they're going to do well. But
Exactly.
they're going through that little 1 month, 2 month. I've been with them
Hmm.
from the start,
Yep.
and I can see them going through that bit that you're talking about, the cycle of 1 month to 6 months.
E- Exactly. And then the trust, like
The
that
trust, yeah,
internal trust and perseverance that you need in order to keep going
yeah,
is it's a difficult thing because it's easy to trust yourself when, when the facts and everything is telling you, oh, look, you've succeeded and you've got,
yeah,
plenty of runway and everything's up and to the right.
yeah.
But for the most part, it's never as up and to the right as it looks. And one of the realities as well as startups, and I think humans in general play this game on the outside of like, oh, everything's just perfect. Everything's just right. We're succeeding. We're hitting it out of the park. And I'm sure you see this when you coach, then people come on the inside and it's like, okay, what's going on really? Like
Yeah,
truly,
that's
let's
right. Yeah,
look at the
yeah.
scary things.
Yeah, I
And
know.
on the inside, it's always messier and more tumultuous. And so, even just being able to normalize that, I often tell early stage founders, listen, everybody is continuously failing until success hits. And then at least success looks like it's happening on the outside. But on the inside, even post your Series A, you're still trying to survive. I've seen startups implode post Series C with like 100+ people. We all see it.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, that's
then
quite
we call
interesting.
them big businesses, but
Yeah.
just because you have raised hundreds, sometimes hundreds of millions in funding,
Oh, wow.
doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you have it made.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's quite interesting as well. There's some big names out there, and even they go, some of them go
Yes.
down or get acquired. Is it acquired or whatever you call it, emerge and
Some
things
of
like
them
that?
shut down, and yeah,
Some
and
shutdowns.
some
Yeah.
actually
Get bought out.
implode,
Yeah.
and some of them implode to the point where they're either kind of these zombie companies that are remaining, but no longer they're like just a shadow of their past successes,
Mm.
or sometimes I have seen people succeed or seemingly succeed in terms of like raise very large rounds, usually at the Series B, Series A, or Series B, and then grow prematurely, try to scale, try to like hit it out of the park in whatever the next level is, in a way that actually ends up killing
Mm.
the idea, the fire, the special thing. And then it doesn't seem like a slow death, but then with the benefit of hindsight, 5 years later, they're nothing like where they thought they would be. And so having that, both the backward clarity, but also being able, and this is part of coaching, particularly with startups, being able to share some of these stories and be like,
Mm.
listen, I understand that you want to raise all the money you possibly can at the highest valuation you can possibly get,
Mm.
but this is just one stepping stone on a much larger path. And if you are just focusing on the next thing and the optics of what the next thing should look like, you lose sight of the big picture. And sometimes you actually shoot yourself in the foot and you can't live into the valuation that you raise at. Even if somebody agrees that you're hypothetically valued at 50 million, 100 million, if you
Mm.
can't actually then prove it, you end up in a down round or you can't raise further. And yeah,
Yeah. I mean, there was the .com
the
there's a
bubble.
bubble,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and now we're in the AI revolution. That's go on.
So with the benefit of hindsight, so I started my career right as the dot-com bubble was bursting.
Yeah.
And I moved to New York in 2000,
Oh, right,
and
okay,
it was the height of everything. Like I remember $24 martinis in Soho, and it was just like insane, the glitz and the glamour. And I
yeah.
moved here from Canada, so I was just
Ah, right.
starry-eyed and
Where
completely.
whereabouts in Canada and New York are you in? Because I mean, I've been to both places, but Canada, I was in Montreal, so Quebec.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ontario and then in
Oh,
Edmonton,
Ontario.
Alberta.
Where?
And Edmonton, Alberta is really cold. That's near
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Rockies. That's where my teen years were spent.
Ah,
And
okay.
then I moved here right after university, undergraduate and graduate school. I moved to New York because I had been obsessed with moving to New York ever
Ah,
since I
okay.
first visited at 14. I was like, this is where
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah.
live.
Well,
And
I love it
so,
around because I wasn't far from Soho in London, but I was a bit more
yes.
north of it. There's a park, bit like Central Park. Well, we got a
Oh,
big one
yes.
called Hyde Park, but it was Regent's Park. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that was like I lived 2 minutes from there for years. I worked there as a firefighter actually.
Yeah. Oh,
So that
wow.
yeah,
That
so
must
that
have been intense.
it was all
Yeah.
intense. Yeah, I mean, it was also a great
Yeah.
life, living
Yeah.
around all that because you're around everything, and it just reminded me of walking around the West End in London and the city
Yeah.
life, and then that's what it was like on a larger scale. Not so much now
Yeah.
because there's larger buildings in London now. Actually, it's changed the
Yeah.
landscape and everything's changed, but. And I used to love it walking around Manhattan. Like you say, Greenwich,
Yeah.
you've got Greenwich there, you got
Yeah.
Soho,
Yeah.
Broadway, you can go through all that. Before you know it, you're in Times Square. And I stayed in Times Square as well.
Yeah.
So I loved that. And Times Square is like Leicester Square, but a bigger version of that as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, I
Manhattan
loved it.
has a magic to it. And I've watched it. It's been 25 years of being here, and the city has
Yeah.
changed so much. And now during COVID and post-COVID, it feels darker. It feels,
All
I
right.
think
Yeah.
some of it is just people have kept a greater distance.
Yeah.
Economically, it has struggled significantly more.
Oh, I
Many
didn't know that.
stores are
All
shut
right.
down.
Oh, I didn't know economically
So
it was struggling. Yeah.
now the city's like this it's almost like two levels. There's the finance layer where everything is booming, or
Mm.
at least it's trying to boom and things are still glitzy. And then there's the everyday real level where there's a lot of poverty, a lot of drug addiction, a lot of homeless
Yeah,
people
that's
sleeping
right.
on the
Yeah,
streets.
yeah. Well, East
And
Greenwich was like that. East Greenwich can compare to West Greenwich in Manhattan.
yeah,
West Greenwich is more modern, but East Greenwich you
yeah.
still saw the few homeless people on the streets and things like that. But it had
And
the
it's a lot,
character. It has the
yeah.
character there.
It's a
You know?
lot more. So when this is the worst I have seen it in the past 25 years of being here. My husband, who was born and bred New Yorker, says that
Mm.
like in the early 80s, from what he remembers as a child, it was
Yeah. Oh,
kind
I
of
was in
like
I was in
bad.
Manhattan in the early
Yeah.
80s. I went to
Yeah.
Manhattan in the early 80s. It
Um,
was a different place in 85
that's
to
yeah.
when they
That's
were
what I
about.
hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went there 5 years later, and it's a completely different place.
Yeah.
They cleaned
Yeah.
it up. I think it was Giuliani. I can't remember his name, but
Yeah.
um,
Giuliani was in the
yeah,
late 90s. That's when I moved. Like,
completely cleaned up the
yeah.
whole of New York.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's interesting to observe the cyclicality, both of what happens, the intensity of the city, but also how it's reflected in the humans living inside of it,
mm,
and what that makes available, what that just affords in terms of psychologically, back to
mm,
like overwhelm versus flow. Right now, the city, the financial industry itself, which is going
mm.
through like so many ups and downs, the
Yeah,
technology industry, same thing.
tech. Yeah, that's
And
right.
exactly. And so that intensity is ratcheting, like it's really increasing,
Yeah,
and people feel very depleted. And burnout is this topic that I get asked in almost every interview. They're like, resilience, how do we
yes,
not burn out? And
right. Yeah,
part of it, in much like in COVID, talking about fear, people were like, oh, you talk, because I would always talk about navigating fear as a weather vane, how to move toward fear as opposed to away from it. But in the pandemic, I was like, listen, being afraid right now makes perfect sense
mm,
because there was a pandemic going on. Right now, I think in much the same way, feeling burnt out makes perfect sense because the
yeah,
level of overwhelm that we're experiencing politically, economically, socially, on a meaning level, as AI becomes more and more real, moving toward a proto consciousness of its own, that state of overwhelm is very real.
yeah,
And believing that there's like some easy answer where we can just stop feeling overwhelmed is, I think, not just false, but places extra stress on us. And so the question, the move, the jujitsu move, if you will, is
mm,
how do you take that overwhelm and flow through it? It's a little bit like if a big wave is coming, diving under it so that it doesn't swallow you whole. How do you work with the energy and the intensity so that it doesn't drown you,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
so that you can swim with those currents, so that you can work with the level of intensity that's happening. Because we're not
Yeah,
going to make it stop or go away. It's just the existence that we're in.
yeah, it's a bit like a surfer avoiding a rip
Hmm.
curl that will pull them
Hmm.
under, really. So
Yes,
it's a kind of
exactly.
kind of a good
Yeah,
analogy there. I was on duty as a firefighter when the World Trade Center
yeah,
had the two twin
yeah,
towers. I've been
yeah,
up the twin towers in '85,
yeah.
and then of course, obviously, my cousin was working there that day. Actually, she got away
Oh my
quite
God. Is she
quickly.
okay?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. She got away and
Okay.
went on the subway all the way to New Jersey when they evacuated it. So that was quite.
Yeah.
But obviously, then I went back there a couple of years later, and then it was just flat with
Yeah.
the plan of building the towers. Is it four
Yeah.
towers there now? You
There's
probably just
actually the
moved there.
one
You probably
tallest.
just moved there actually,
I
just after it.
had, yeah, I watched the towers fall from the roof of our building. We lived in the East
Oh,
Village.
it happened while you was there.
And
Oh,
yeah, it was extremely not just intense, but then there's moments like this, extremely traumatic moments
yeah, yeah.
where there is no, like, you're not gonna flow through any of
No,
that. You prepare your system ideally so that you can at least have some resilience to survive it, and so that the
yeah.
trauma doesn't completely overwhelm you. But I developed panic attacks after 9/11. For about 6 months, I thought something was wrong with my
It
heart.
is
I thought I was
perfectly
gonna
normal to
die.
have that happen
Exactly.
because
Precisely.
I lived where the 7-Eleven bombings happened. We know the one
Yeah.
afterwards
Yep.
in
Yep.
London.
I
Um,
remember.
yeah, my fire station that I worked, the crew went to it actually, but I was
Hmm.
in Canada actually. That's when I was in.
Oh, okay.
I was in
Yeah.
Quebec at the time when that
That
happened.
was lucky.
Oh
Yeah.
God! But it was just 10 minutes away from where I lived.
Yeah.
All those bombings,
Yeah.
you know. So I also felt, I saw the flowers when I came back all around, with
Yeah.
the messages. It was hard to get into it as you call it subway tube station, we
Yeah.
called it,
Yeah.
without actually thinking, is this going to happen?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew where the bus was where it exploded with the bomb. I knew that
Hmm.
place. It was outside the British
Hmm.
Medical Association, which is like the big trade union for doctors for the whole of
Yeah.
England, UK. I mean, so that was a real kind of,
Yeah.
as close to home as you would ever get it. It's where I
Yeah.
lived and worked. It's like,
Oh, I'm
whoa.
so sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
no. But I mean,
Yeah.
when you talk about the panic attack, I mean, obviously I had to go
Yeah.
back to work,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was still a firefighter. So you had to deal with
Yeah.
that, you had to deal with that. But I didn't go on the job, but I did go on similar
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
smaller scale, but traumatic
Hmm.
ones on the
Yeah,
same.
and trauma is our nervous system just informing us that the level of overwhelm has reached such a large scale that the body capitulates for a moment.
Mm,
Like there is just, and part of resilience is being able to ebb through that, to work with that and through that, so that over time we can recover. And
mm,
knowing, back to flow and the idea of continuous flow is that in much the same way as we are leveling up in a game or in something that is intense in the moment, a sport or something positive, we can look at life
mm,
and the phases of life
mm.
as something like that. And
Absolutely.
so being able to achieve a mindset, if you will,
Mm,
of continuously meeting what the world is asking of us or being able to dive in when the big wave is coming, that state over time builds a great sense of trust. And so then we can deal with emergencies, not
yeah.
necessarily. Some of it is way bigger than our individual agency, but we can still retain the clarity, agency, and trust to be able to deal with whatever happens.
That's absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
spot on there. Well, this has been such a powerful conversation, Dessy. The idea that we're not just one fixed self, but rather a series of evolving narratives is so eye-opening. So, before we wrap up, where can listeners learn more about your work, and how can they start implementing these principles in their own lives?
So I have a book out, which is called From Overwhelm to Flow. It is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and they can go to the Crate site. So that's
Yeah.
crate.com, crate.com, and they can learn more about the book. They can learn more about the framework. We're going to be hosting some webinars in the near future, some free
Mm,
webinars so that
mm,
people can come in and ask questions. So there's a
mm,
sign up form there on the crate.com, I think it's /classes, and they can come and they can reach out. They can reach out directly directly on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. And I always try to answer messages. Sometimes it takes me 2 or 3 days, but I try to answer all messages and engage with people and meet them where they're at and see whether the Crate framework can help them, and part of it is as a tool to help themselves. This is not a panacea. It's not an answer that will fix everything. It's a way of being able to look at the world and feel like you have the tools to deal with whatever happens.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Dessy. Dessy, once again, thanks very much for coming to share your wisdom with
Thank
my
you,
audience, with my audience today. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts, or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.